Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this quarter's State of the Industry update. Today's topic will be around 2022 in review and strategizing for 2023. My name is Sarah Bullock. I'm a marketing associate here at Ecotrope. I'm joined today by David Pedrick, our product manager for the HERS rating market, as well as Emily Steele, our strategic accounts manager for our utilities segment. So on the agenda for today, we'll be going over a brief introduction to Ecotrope for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We'll also get into 2022 in review, where we'll review over 280,000 homes that were submitted to Ecotrope Rater in 2022 and discuss some insights regarding electrification, the HERS index, utility rebate programs, and some equipment insights. After that, we'll shift gears a little bit and we'll switch over to what's in store for 2023. And we'll go over kind of the new regulatory changes on the horizon, as well as some of the housing market outlook challenges. We'll also go into some high-performing products that we feel are underutilized that builders can leverage to their advantage to meet certain regulatory requirements and rebate criteria. And then we'll get into some untapped opportunities for rebate and incentive compliance based on region. Lastly, we'll dive into some Q&A. So feel free as we're talking today and moving through these slides to submit your questions in the Q&A chat box, and we'll try to get to all of those at the end. And with that said, I'll pass the mic over to David Pedrick.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Thanks for everybody for attending here to the webinar today. And I'm going to start off by doing a little bit of an introduction to Ecotrope, like Sarah said, and then diving into data about how homes were built in 2022, in the last year. We're going to talk about kind of general HERS rating data, and then more specifically about certain products and electrification. Then we're going to add a little bit of context about kind of what we're seeing in the housing market and the difficulties in the housing market moving into this year, 2023. And with that kind of context, dive into what are the difficulties, but what are the opportunities because of that can be taken advantage of using data and using energy modeling to find the best way to build homes to earn the most number of tax credits or rebates, and just generally lower people's utility burdens in 2023. So first off, Ecotrope, we're a platform that brings all of the stakeholders in home construction onto one platform. So that includes the home energy raters, that includes utilities, finance organizations, builders, and building product manufacturers, all onto one platform so they can see the data that they need to make the best decisions that will help them make the best energy efficient homes for the most cost-effective building practices. So that's a little bit about Ecotrope. We're also the number one, as a result of that, we're the number one HERS rating tool in the US. And about 1 in 4 new homes in the country use our platform for a HERS rating. So that's about 280,000 homes every year. And so far, we have about 1 million homes in our database, from the past 4 or 5.5 years or so. We're also the top provider of 45L reports, and we support 30 or so utility programs across the country. So let's dive into a year in review from last year. This is going to be an overview of the 280,000 HERS rated homes submitted to Ecotrope from the past year. That's about 85% of all of the HERS ratings completed in the United States. And most of those HERS ratings are completed in Texas. These trends that you're looking at right now of how many homes in each state were HERS rated follow pretty closely to housing completions in each of those states. The couple places where that doesn't quite hold true is in California, where they have an alternative pathway towards energy rating and energy code compliance, and in Oregon and North Dakota. But otherwise, our top states are North Carolina, Texas, and Arizona. And we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about those large states that get a lot of HERS ratings. throughout the presentation today. So keep those in mind. So moving on to kind of how these homes that were HERS rated score, we see that in general, we have a pretty nice normal distribution of HERS ratings from like 35 up to 82 or 83. There's definitely HERS ratings that are down in that 0 category, 0 range, but very, not too many. And the bulk of the HERS ratings are here, kind of in between the 48 to 69 threshold. To put a little context on this, HERS index is always a comparison. And so the average HERS index being 58.5, went around that to 59, means that that average HERS index is 41% more efficient than a standard baseline home built around 2006. So we're increasing the energy performance of our homes over time. And right now we're about average of 59. A little bit more context here is to tie this to the Energy Star version 3.1 target index. So there's lots of requirements to become Energy Star certified home, including additional inspections and some additional building techniques that aren't strictly connected to the HERS index. So this isn't exactly implying that these homes would meet Energy Star, but the range for the target is between 52 and 61 for HERS index. So our average HERS index is a 59, which is within that band of Energy Star certification, which, as many people know, is also now the requirement for the 45L tax credit. That means that on average, homes are within that target range. However, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily qualifying for the many reasons that I just listed. In addition to the HERS index for these Energy Star target does vary by climate zone and building type. So there's a lot of factors that go into there. But on average, we're sitting there in the same ballpark, indicating how many homes would be potentially able to earn that tax credit once it starts coming around to Energy Star version 3.1. So moving on, we're going to talk a lot about electrification and equipment insights today. First off, kind of what is the state of electrification in 2022 and what type of equipment we saw increasing their market share in HERS rated homes. We're going to spend time talking about electrification because it has been very popular to talk about in the past year, whether it's type of cooking, gas stove or electric stoves or induction stoves, as well as the headlines around increased air source heat pump sales. There's been a lot of talk about electrification. So we can look at our data and kind of see what's actually happening in the new home market. There's also states and cities that are starting to require electrified homes with no gas hookups. So let's see what is actually happening. So kind of the big headline news is that the end of last year, beginning of this year, we saw kind of highest electrification market share that we've ever seen in HERS rated homes. The trend is increasing as well. It's not just a little spike here. While there's fluctuations by region, by city, and over time here, the trend is upwards. And it started, around 19% of all homes at the end of 2021. And we see this increase to around 22% of all homes are 100% electric homes in the HERS rating kind of population here. That means there's no gas hookup. It's electric stove, it's electric water heat, it's electric heat, and it's 100% electrified in this case. So if this is what's happening, let's look at those top 3 HERS rating states across the country, Arizona, Texas, and North Carolina, to see how those large states are, what their trends are. And when we look at that, we see that not every single state has the same trend here. And Texas, the largest state for HERS ratings, is actually flat or maybe slightly negative over that same period for market share. While we see that Arizona and North Carolina are seeing their electrification rates increase quite quickly over the past year. We're seeing a 10 to 15% increase of electrification in those states, while Texas is pretty flat, which is really interesting. Hopefully we can learn if there are utility rebates in those states that are kind of driving that, or if it's other trends. We're going to talk about some products that will help you get towards electrification in these markets, as well as kind of what the impact in terms of rebate would be if you were to do that in those states with utility rebates and the federal tax credit. But let's dive a little bit more into Texas to see what's happening there. One of the main ways that people are electrifying, or one of the requirements to electrify, is figuring out an electric source of heating. And when we look at this, we see that Texas, the electrification trend is decreasing a little bit, even though the air source heat pump trend in that state is still increasing, which is, interesting. The air source heat pump trend is increasing at about the same rate as it is nationally. Air source heat pumps, as it was reported in the news, outsold gas furnaces for the first time last year. And we see that market share growth that would, reflect that news article in our data here as well. But we're seeing this trend start to diverge. Texas electrification is decreasing, even though their heating systems are becoming more electric. So let's dive a little bit more into that heating source story here. In HERS-rated homes, gas furnaces are still outselling air source heat pumps by quite a lot right now, even though those trends are starting to converge. We see gas furnaces losing market share and air source heat pumps gaining market share, but the air source heat pumps haven't quite, they're still a ways away of being installed more frequently than furnaces. So we think back to that news article that we heard earlier, where air source heat pumps are outselling them. So that's primarily in the existing home market. And also sometimes you may install multiple air source heat pumps to replace one furnace if you're adding kind of a mini split solution to electrify a home that has a gas furnace today. So we see the trends of air source heat pumps increasing, but there's still quite a few gas furnaces being installed across the country in new homes, new HERS-rated homes. Another place that has a lot of focus for electrification is hot water. And this is a 3-month moving average for a national trend of hot water. And we see that we've broken this first breakdown into instantaneous or tankless hot water heaters compared to hot water heaters with a tank. Those hot water heaters with a tank could be electric, they could be gas, they could be a heat pump. So that's kind of all of the tanked versions of hot water heaters. And we see that instantaneous hot water heaters are gaining market share ever so slightly. And they ended the year about 35% market share in HERS-rated homes. So that kind of tells us the story between, and of course those instantaneous or tankless water heaters are gas or natural gas fueled systems. So we see that is actually increasing. But does that mean we're actually seeing an increase in gas water heating? We can find out a little bit here. So when we look at this, to look at the fuel types for those water heating systems, electric is moving a little bit positive, but not gaining much market share from natural gas. The place that it would be gaining market share is that in those tank hot water heaters, there's the gas systems, electric systems, and heat pump water heater systems. So in order for electric to increase, given the trend that we saw with the tankless and non-tank and tanked versions, is that those electric, natural gas, and heat pump water heaters would have to be eating into the natural gas tank water heater systems to gain more market share in the electric kind of natural gas breakdown. So it appears that that might be happening here. We can dive into that and look at that though. And so let's look at all of the electric water heaters, and we can see that our trends, we have a heat pump hot water tank still quite low here on this trend line. 6.7% market share for those heat pump systems. Now, we're going to talk a lot about this later, about how many rebates can be earned by just installing a heat pump water heater. So this looks like a really big opportunity for those manufacturers of heat pump water heaters to really grow their market share by leveraging those rebates and those tax incentives that are available for home performance in the new home market, because they do have so much market share that they could gain from the hot water tank systems. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk about utility trends in the new home market.
Great, thank you, David. As Sarah mentioned earlier, I'm our accounts manager, where I work with all of our utility partners here at Ecotrope, and I help oversee any new implementations and any new requests that come through to support the different features we have for all of our utility partners. So with that in mind, I wanted to provide a recap of where we stand with 2022 and the different programs we supported. So last year, there were 22 states with utility programs supported by Ecotrope. And there are, of course, other new construction programs out there, but this map here shows where in the US, raters can submit directly to their utilities using Ecotrope. And you can see the trend, the Southwest, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, which is pretty similar to the HERS rating map that David showed earlier, where we are seeing lots of HERS ratings come through in those regions. And so we also are seeing participation with utility programs there as well. And overall, we saw over 90,000 homes get submitted to utility programs via Ecotrope last year. So this is about a third of all the HERS ratings that came through our app are also going through to utility programs. And we also helped a couple of different programs a couple of different utilities bring new programs to the market, including an all-electric program in Massachusetts, where builders could potentially get a $25,000 rebate for a single family home that qualifies and meets all of the different requirements within this all-electric high efficiency program. So we're super excited about that. And it's a really great opportunity for builders to work with their utilities to create these efficient homes and get the large rebate dollars. So with that, we decided to take a look at some example homes and illustrate these programs by looking at 3 different states that had updated rebate calculations in 2022 and look to see how these qualifying homes could potentially get rebate dollars and how the specs would translate over into an actual rebate. These homes are in different climate zones with different systems and then different requirements for each utility. But you can see how, for example, with the DTE home, how these specs then translate into $1,300 from the DTE program. For Duke, we are able to get $1,700 from the Duke Energy Carolinas program. And then in Texas, $625 from the AEP Texas program. So we want to kind of use these as a starting point where we can see these are some example homes that are already qualifying for the programs. They're already getting rebate dollars, but we want to keep these projects in mind because later on we want to see how we could potentially tweak them. If there are any updates we could make to the home spec to boost that rebate dollar amount, just by making some slight tweaks. With that, I think I'll pass it back to you, David, to keep us going.
Great, yeah, so those were some kind of example homes and example specs that earned those rebates in those states. So as we kind of have that context of what's happened in the past year, we want to start thinking about this year and moving forward. So we've kind of, talked about it's going to be a challenging 2023 potentially, but we think there's plenty of opportunity here. And we want to help provide that information so that people know how to, maintain their business through 2023 by strategically using data to find that low-hanging fruit opportunities. So the things that have happened that are potentially causing some challenge or need additional kind of like context to understand and know how to take advantage of are the new 45L tax credit that's come into is in effect now. There are Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are looking to add more volume to their green building programs. There's various states adopting IECC 2021. And then, of course, there's the new SEER 2 HSPF EER 2 standards for HVAC equipment testing that are causing some changes here and there that need to be taken account for. And then there's now with the 45L tax credit, Energy Star version 3.1 is now in effect for all states. And we're preparing for version 3.2 coming down the pike. The same can go for DOE Zero Energy Ready and Zero Energy Ready 2. And then like Emily just talked about, all the new utility programs that are coming online in various states. So these are all kind of pieces of a puzzle that are relatively new, that every year there's a new puzzle that has to be solved for to figure out how to best take advantage of these tax credits and all these opportunities. And then this is all kind of new legislation, new regulations, new incentive programs, and that's all layered into what we are seeing in the housing market. We see the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, which in turn are making homes less affordable and fewer homes being sold. There's electricians are in short supply as well. So as we think about electrification and adding more scope of work for them in a house, there's a shortage there. So it's harder to make those things happen. And then in addition to that, the mortgage rates are going up. So it's a little bit harder to sell a home nowadays. So there's just lots of things that are going on that are making these new things a little bit more challenging to decipher and understand what the impact of them will be. However, there is that problem is an opportunity for a lot of people. If they can figure out how to find the best kind of secret sauce to earning these tax credits, they can be really successful, or products that can really find ways to help builders earn these, they can be really successful still. Because we see that there's still opportunity, whether it's products like heat pump water heaters that have a big impact but are not used very much, or I'll talk about places where energy efficient products are used a lot and places where they're used not a lot, and what happens if we switch those two things. So there's still a lot of opportunities to take advantage of those gaps in installation practices across the country. So these opportunities are earning more 45L tax credit, $2,500 to $5,000, depending on which level you're going for here. Participate in the Fannie and Freddie Mac green-backed mortgage programs to increase your interest rates or loan to value ratio for builders, or the utility program incentives that Emily just talked about that range from anywhere from $100 to $25,000 per home of incentives in particular areas of the country. So you start to layer these all together, and the total value available to a builder starts to add up quite significantly. So what we wanted to do here is look at kind of common energy efficient building practices, and look at places where they aren't adopted at a very high rate, and then look at other places where they have kind of an incongruous adoption rate that is significantly higher, and then say what happens if that low adoption rate was more like its peer that had a higher adoption rate. And peer for us is like relatively similar climate zone and in a relatively similar area of the country. So places that you would expect to be kind of similar, but they're not. And say, what if they were more similar? How much would that be worth to that kind of lower performing part of the country if they were to increase their adoption of a certain product. So the things that we're going to talk about here are ERVs, continuous installation, heat pump water heaters, and air source heat pumps. So we're going to look at all these three, and we have identified kind of different regions where there are big differences in their adoption rates. So there's a lot of information on this slide. The first kind of row here is continuous insulation or insulated sheathing. And we see that warm climates have a pretty strong adoption rate. Arizona and Texas both have super high adoption rates of continuous insulation. But places like Florida, granted there's a lot of hurricane risk there, have very low adoption rates of continuous insulation. So what would Florida look like if it built with the same level of continuous insulation as Texas or Arizona does? Like, what would be the impact to Florida builders if they did that? Then we're going to do the same thing with energy recovery ventilation or ERV systems. Minnesota has a lot of 44% of homes have ventilation systems, but other cold climate states have much lower adoption rates, like upstate New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa. We'll do the same thing with heat pump water heaters. North Carolina and Florida have relatively high compared to their peers in South Carolina and Georgia. And air source heat pumps is a slightly different story here. We see slowly increasing overall. We see some markets with really high adoption: South Carolina, Georgia, Texas, and Arizona. And what would happen if there was even more growth in that with premium air source heat pumps? So to do this evaluation, we have a tool that it's called scenario modeling that allows us to take a very large data set of real homes from 2022 and temporarily make an update to that energy model or to that home, and then evaluate how much energy savings is result of that individual change, and record that and analyze all of that in batch. It makes it really quick to do this analysis and allows us to kind of have these impact statements that are very broad for the entire entire region, and tie it back to a very specific change to show like this is the cause, this is the output of particular design change in this home specification. So we did that. We call it scenario modeling. Here's the scenario results. I'm going to talk about two different numbers here. One, I'm going to talk about the benefit in dollars per 100 homes built. And then I'm also going to talk about just looking at homes that have a positive impact, meaning that actually earn additional dollars, what the average additional impact is or positive impact is for homes that benefit. The per 100 homes is all of the homes, so some perform better and some don't. And then the other one is only the ones that actually perform better. So I'm going to be talking about two numbers here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is continuous installation in Florida. And we have this bar chart. We have kind of a premium continuous installation and a standard continuous installation product that we modeled here. And we see that the range in additional rebate earned for these homes is between $2,700 and $2,800 per home that benefits from continuous installation. And so that's quite significant amount of money. And if we look at if every single home did this, we're seeing anywhere between like in the ballpark of $100,000 between $80,000 and $100,000 per 100 homes, earning that additional credit, utility credit, tax credit, if you did that across all homes in Florida. So we see some significant impact if homes in Florida use continuous installation, like homes in Arizona or Texas used continuous installation. So the next analysis here is for ERVs. So this is ERVs in cold climates, saying, Minnesota does a really good job of installing ERVs. What if other cold climates did the same thing? And when we see this, for homes that benefit from it, it's $2,200 per home that a home could earn in additional rebate dollars if it's built in a utility area that has a rebate or a tax credit like the 45L. And on average, if we look at per 100 homes, it's again in that $100,000 per 100 homes analyzed. So again, still pretty significant. Not quite $2,200, but still significant over all homes built in those cold climates. Next, we can talk about heat pump water heaters. So heat pump water heaters, this is really kind of new, new product that is getting a lot of people's attention because of how efficient they are. And so they're being incentivized quite a lot by utility rebate programs. And if we add heat pump water heaters to homes in Georgia and South Carolina, and heat pump water heaters similar to the ones used in North Carolina and Florida in this case, we see that a home could earn $2,200 in addition for their rebate. And on a per 100 homes, it's again in that $100,000 per 100 homes category. So again, quite significant. If Georgia and South Carolina were a little bit more like North Carolina and Florida, and I bet they would hate us if I heard them say that. But when we're comparing peer states, that's what happens. So again, let's look at air source heat pumps in Texas and Arizona. Similar story. We see about $2,200 per home that benefits by installing an air source heat pump, and on a per 100 home basis, about $80,000 per 100 homes. So the next thing we want to do is look back at what happens to those utility rebate programs if we made these changes to that standard home that Emily talked about earlier. That standard home in these 3 different regions. So let me kind of pause here and talk about this in a little bit more detail. What we want to do is we just talked about these kind of 3 products, and we have these 3 example homes. These are kind of example homes that are somewhat representative of a home that earns this tax credit or earns this utility rebate in each of these locations, in this case, Michigan, North Carolina, and Texas. And currently, a home roughly built to this spec would earn between $600 and $1,700, depending on the state that it's built in here. So what we want to do is say, this is a home that already is earning a rebate, but what would happen if we added in one of these air source heat pumps or heat pump water heaters or continuous installation? How much additional above this would they earn? And when we do that, we start to see a pretty cool picture here. So we see on the far right-hand side, the Duke Energy Carolinas program going from $1,700 all the way up to almost $4,000. So a whole lot of, almost doubling the rebate available if they installed a heat pump water heater there. Then in Michigan, we said, what if they added a air source heat pump to this example home? And that was earning $700 additional dollars for that home in Michigan. Again, this is just one particular home that we analyzed, which means it's slightly different than the numbers we talked about in general if we analyzed all homes on the slides before. And in Texas, the heat pump water heater, you'll see it earns at $300 additional in Texas. That's the same heat pump water heater that earns $2,200 in Duke Energy Carolinas. It's $300 more in this Texas program. So it kind of depends on where you go, but there's still benefit in both areas. So a few takeaways here for today. 2022 was a very good year in the high performance home industry. The average HERS index was about 59 for homes across the country. We also saw more HERS ratings completed than in any year previously in 2022. We also saw that all electric homes market share is beginning to rise, and it also reached its highest point ever at the end of last year. This is more or less mimics the market share of air source heat pumps. So despite seeing in the news that air source heat pumps outsold gas furnaces for the first time last year, we see that in new homes, gas furnaces still have an edge over air source heat pumps. And that means a lot of air source heat pumps are being retrofitted in homes that have gas heat, which is good as well. But we're still seeing that kind of slow trend in new homes making the switch over to air source heat pumps. So all in all, that means the electric heating equipment growth is often outpacing all electric home construction. Then in addition to that, we see that there's kind of added complexity to the regulatory landscape because of the new 45L, because of new utility rebate programs, new standards of testing mechanical systems. But that all is in itself an opportunity because there is more money available out there to take advantage of these programs. And despite all of those benefits, there's still kind of a prevailing wind of fewer homes being built across the country. However, we're seeing where it's kind of to be decided how much it does slow down the housing market and when it does start to pick up again, because there still is a severe housing shortage across the country. So I started to mention this a little bit already, but that regulatory landscape is driven by 45L, and the opportunities there are driven by 45L, as well as these utility programs. We saw that in that analysis, a lot of times the benefiting homes earned less than $2,500. So that means that they may not quite be getting to that Energy Star certification, but they are picking up utility rebates. And there's a big opportunity there to combine both of those to really unlock a lot of rebate dollars. And it's all about finding the right product for the right home in the right place to really take advantage of all those super successfully. And that's, again, it's a very region specific, home design specific strategy to find the best possible way to build that home to earn the most rebate dollars. And ultimately, it's going to be a performance-based calculation to figure out what that system is. But if you are able to do that, leveraging these programs can really be a boon to builders and raters in this year of 2023. So with that, I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar, and we have ample time here for question and answer. So please enter your Q&A in the chat, and Sarah will help us curate those and ask them. And Emily and I will do our best to answer them here. And if we can't answer them here, we'll follow up with you directly.
Awesome. Thank you, David and Emily. So yeah, we already have a couple questions in here, so I'll just start from the top. But as David said, please just continue to send your questions in. We have about 20 minutes to get through them. So starting off at the top, so one person asked, considering the issues with inconsistency in modeling, how trustworthy do you find the data generated by HERS rating companies? Can you provide any insight on that, David?
I would say that ResNet and the HERS rating community has a quality assurance process that is reviewing lots of energy models for accuracy. Given that there are bound to be some inconsistencies across that, but the quality assurance that happens in a HERS rating environment is much higher than in other data collection environments as well. So there's always going to be room for improvement, but in general, this stuff is vetted and reviewed by multiple people. And we also have some quality assurance checks in our software too, to make sure things are reasonable. And I would say that there is inconsistencies in some places, but all in all, it's very representative of what is happening, on the grounds with how homes are built.
Great. Thank you, David. One person asked, are these numbers normalized for population changes or adjusted based on rebates offered? This came in a little bit earlier, so I think this was referring to some of the insights shared in the 2022 and review portion around, looking back and some of the data we shared there. Can you shed any light on that?
So the numbers reported for number of HERS ratings, average HERS ratings, those are going to be the true numbers for that particular state. HERS ratings are predominantly new homes. So when we look at number of ratings happening in a particular state, it's going to be very tied to migration patterns and where people are building a lot of new homes. And Texas is booming. A ton of people are moving to Texas. So a lot of new homes are built there. We have a lot of data on those homes. In terms of like rebate dollars and incentive dollars, we report everything on like kind of per 100 home basis or per benefiting home. That almost every state, there's more than 100 homes built on it in the year. So you could multiply that to get to kind of the total available in a particular state. However, some of these things are kind of specific to a utility boundary as well. So that is another factor in that analysis.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question, I think referring back to the water heating trends portion. So someone asked, wouldn't a better measure of water heating be electric versus gas as opposed to tank versus instantaneous? Tank versus instantaneous can be, I guess, questionable. Can you shed light on, why we did that, or yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna assume that. So we did talk about tank versus tankless water heaters, and then after that we did break it down by fuel type, gas versus electric, and then following that we did break it down by of all the electric types, how much were heat pump versus the other types. So I think we did cover that. Happy to share the slides here afterwards as well, so we can dive into that, because a fuel type and water heater type do have a matrixed overlay, multiple. You can have an electric tank or gas tank as well. So, but I think we covered that, and I'm happy to share the slides here and toggle back to it.
Great. Yeah. For anyone interested, we will be sharing the slides as well as a recording of the webinar at the conclusion of this session. So if you have any further questions or want to review things, we'll be sending that out. And you can also follow up with us and ask any other questions you might have. Someone also asked, this might be a question for Emily, if you could elaborate on the programs in South Carolina at all and give a bit of some highlights about the Duke Energy programs.
Yeah, for sure. So we support both the Duke Energy Progress programs and the Duke Energy Carolinas program. So we have the submission buttons available for both of those, QA checks, an online intake tool. So when you're building out your model, you will be able to see all the different program requirements, and they can hit that submission button to send a copy of the project to the program team. If you don't have access to it right now, I'd recommend reaching out to the program team, because they're the ones who alert us when we need to give raters access to that submission button. But again, it's those two different programs, the Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. Next question, will Ecotrope Rater comply with the tighter ASHRAE standard 140 test criteria to improve consistency in the rating tool? Is that on the horizon, David?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Also, is there any idea about when DOE zero energy ready homes version 2 will be included?
Yeah, so DOE Zero Energy Ready Homes version 2 is the requirement for 45L in not this year, but the coming year. And so there's need for people to start planning how to build homes in the next few months because 45L is tied to when the home is sold. So if you start building a home and homes are taking longer to build right now than they have in the past because of some shortages and supply chain issues. So they're starting to build homes probably June or July that will be sold in the 2024, which is that new standard. And we plan on implementing that around the mid-year here as well to catch those planning efforts.
Great. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. Next up, someone's asking who has the ERV incentive? Like, where is that rebate money coming from?
So I don't believe there's a specific ERV incentive, but rather it's a performance pathway. So we included ERV information, I think, with some of these specs so that we could just illustrate the spec of the home. So it's not that there's a specific incentive for it, but rather we're looking at the overall performance of the home.
Awesome. Next up, also on ERVs, how does Ecotrope handle ERVs in the calculation when only the ASRE field is entered? Other software tools require both the SRE and the ASRE or a TRE and the TRE combination. A lot of acronyms there.
Yeah, I don't know all the acronyms there. So I don't know if I can answer that completely. And we implement the ResNet and DOE and EPA kind of credentialed software. So we're modeling it and handling it similarly to other softwares that have that credential as well. But I can talk to our energy model developers as well to get a better answer on that.
Awesome. Yeah, this person was anonymous. So if you would like us to dive into that further and you want to reach out to us at info@ecotrope.com, we'd be happy to look into that issue and get you an answer. Another person asked, how does Ecotrope define the average new home? Because wouldn't the average new home be whatever the average index is in a given year? This came in a little bit later in the presentation towards the end, so I'm not sure exactly which one this is referring to, but yeah.
So for our analysis here, we compared everything to existing homes built and entered into Ecotrope. So everything is to how homes are being built across the country.
Thank you. Someone asked if there is a product available for Canada provinces and territories.
So Canada uses the National Building Code, which is being introduced and required for every province and territory to follow in early spring of 2024. And right now, the requirements around what softwares are applicable there are kind of tied to this tool called HOT 2000, which is developed by Canadian government to show code compliance. And right now, that's kind of the tool to use for that code compliance energy modeling in Canada. We're always interested in finding new places to help support and to provide our software in. So if you're interested in using Ecotrope in Canada, please let us know, and we'd be happy to talk with you about that.
Great. Let's see here. One person asked, have you seen confirmation from DO in regards to the money, the rebate amounts for zero energy ready homes, 45L rebates available for multifamily projects that have energy ratings performed? Are they offering $5,000 per unit so long as prevailing wages are paid?
Yeah, so the 45L is applicable to multifamily homes. And yes, if prevailing wages are paid, they can earn the full 45L tax credit for DOE Zero Energy Ready, which is $5,000 per unit. If the prevailing wage isn't followed, then there's you get the kind of next step down in tax credit. So that's definitely happening.
Awesome. And it looks like that is the end of the questions. So thank you to everyone who participated and asked questions. As we mentioned before, we will be sending out the recording of this session as well as the slides for everyone to review. And please feel free to follow up with any other questions you might have. Thank you so much to David and Emily for presenting today and sharing all of your insights on 2022 in review, as well as kind of strategizing for 2023. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining today, and please keep an eye out on your inbox for the follow-up from this session, as well as for updates on our next State of the Industry webinar, which will be coming up at the end of next quarter.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.